Hello everyone, and welcome back. I hope this story finds you in peace and strength. Sometimes, truth doesn't bring healing. It brings a storm. For CEO James, that storm had a name: Trang's father. The man who had once walked freely in the shadows, whose actions had shattered livelihoods and nearly destroyed an entire company, could no longer remain hidden. It was time for justice. And James, the man known for his quiet strength, had to decide how far he would go to protect not just the woman he once loved, but the dignity of hundreds who had suffered. But justice is never clean, especially when it means confronting someone once close. Someone whose fall could take love down with it. Would Trang stand aside and watch her father be held accountable? Or would she stand in James's way, risking everything they had? This was no longer about the past. It was about the kind of future they were willing to fight for. It all began on a sweltering summer afternoon. Inside a dim, dust-choked warehouse, the old wood processing machine sputtered out its final breath. James stood alone in the silence, sweat glistening on his brow. The hum of productivity was gone. What remained was a haunting stillness, louder than any machine, that confirmed something deeper had gone terribly wrong. This wasn't just about a failed engine. Weeks earlier, his company had almost collapsed, gutted by sudden capital withdrawals, a sabotaged project, and betrayal from within. Hundreds of workers were left jobless, families broken, and in the sleepless nights that followed, James unraveled the truth thread by painful thread, until one devastating answer emerged. Trang's father had orchestrated it all. James remembered the last time he saw Trang. Her eyes pleaded with guilt, lips trembling as she whispered, "Please, forgive him." "My father is not a bad man." And then she was gone, off to study overseas, leaving only silence behind. He had forgiven once before, John. And that mercy had nearly cost everything. Forgiveness had its place. But this was different. This was systematic cruelty, calculated destruction. That evening, James met with Tuan in the old tool shed behind the warehouse. In the warm glow of a hanging bulb, Tuan's words were sharp. "You forgave John. Look what that brought us." "This man is worse. He didn't just hurt you, he destroyed lives. People can't pay hospital bills, James." "Can they forgive that?" James's hands tightened on his knees. "I know," he said quietly. "But, Trang, she didn't do this," Tuan replied firmly. "Her father did, and he was right." Justice isn't vengeance, it's responsibility. But that didn't make the choice any less heavy. James didn't want to be the villain in Trang's story. But he couldn't abandon the victims in his. He reached out to Fat, a former gang member turned farmer. James hoped Fat could gather intel, but Fat had left that world behind. Respectfully, James let him go. He'd find another way. At the same time, another storm was brewing. News reached too deep, James's gentle and kind-hearted partner, that her biological parents might still be alive. For 20 years she'd believed they were dead. Now her world was cracked wide open. James stayed beside her through the tears. "If you go looking," he said, "do it for yourself." "But if they never came for you, you deserve to know why." Amid all the personal turmoil, James kept going. Document by document, he unearthed the web Trang's father had spun: financial trails, secret meetings, illicit transactions. This wasn't revenge. This was truth. Then came the moment James feared most. Trang returned. Her hair was shorter, her face thinner, but her eyes still held the softness he remembered. She stood in the garden where they once shared morning coffee. "Please," she whispered. "Don't do this." Pain flickered in James's chest. But his voice was steady. "I have to." "He's your father, but they were my workers. My family. They lost everything because of him." Tears welled in her eyes. "You don't know what he meant." "I do," James said gently. "He stole. He lied. And when the damage was done, he walked away." Trang's voice broke. "If you do this, you'll lose me forever." James stepped closer, placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. "I lost you the moment you asked me to protect someone who never protected anyone else." "I still care for you. But I can't ignore what he did." "Not this time." That night, James handed the final piece of evidence to the authorities. Trang's father would be brought to court. The law would decide his fate. James didn't sleep. He watched dawn crawl in, wondering if justice always came at the cost of love. But when morning came, Too Deep brought him lemon tea and sat beside him in silence. She didn't need to speak. In her quiet support, James found clarity. The courtroom was cold, clinical, nothing like the storm raging inside James's chest. Trang's father entered in a gray suit, eyes still steeled by power. He looked untouchable. But James came armed, not just with files, but with truth. Witness accounts, financial records, confidential audio. And as the evidence was laid down, brick by damning brick, it became undeniable. Trang stood in the back, wrapped in a coat far too large. Her eyes were red. She said nothing, did nothing. During a recess, she approached James. You did what you believed was right, she said softly. He nodded. I wish it hadn't come to this. Her voice was barely a whisper. Me too, but I see it now. He wasn't just my father, he was the man who destroyed so many lives. She gave him a faint, sad smile. Goodbye, James, and just like that, she walked away. Back at the countryside, Too Deep was tending her lemon vines when James returned. The sunset bathed her in gold. She didn't ask for details, she simply walked up, placed a hand on his chest, and said, "Let it rest, James." You did what you had to do, but peace didn't last long. A week later, James received an anonymous message. You've made enemies, James. Some truths should have stayed buried. You want justice? Let's see if you can handle the cost. At first, he ignored it. But then sabotage struck. Shipments vanished. Contracts were cancelled. Suppliers went silent. Someone powerful was moving against him. Too Deep saw the return of the distant gaze in his eyes, the late-night stares at a blank phone screen. You're not alone in this, she reminded him over a quiet dinner of grilled corn and clams. I know, he said, taking her hand. But I feel like I've pulled back a curtain, and behind it is something darker than I ever imagined. Then let's face it together, she whispered, and for the first time in weeks, he smiled. Too Deep was facing her own truth too. The lie about her parents had fractured her heart, but not broken her. With James by her side, she confronted her uncle Keen. I wanted to protect you, Keen confessed. They asked me not to tell. Safer for who? She demanded. Me, or them? He gave her a name. A location. A fragile thread leading to the past. Now, she had a choice. Follow it, or let it lie. The days ahead were uncertain. James had lit a fire, and enemies were closing in. But beside him stood a woman stronger than ever. They would walk this road together. Because justice has a price, but it also has a future.